I was pretty close, I would say. Maybe within 5 feet.
If you had been, or required by court order to stay 20, 30 feet away from the parking enforcement officers, could you have that type of communication with them?
I don't think we could actually have a good conversation, you know, between the two parties. It'd be more difficult to, you know, I guess I would be tempted to raise my voice in an attempt to make sure that they can clearly understand me and hear me. So I don't think it would be conducive to that.
Have you ever suggested to a parking enforcement officer that he or she should resign from her job?
I don't recall any specific instances. I know that one time I spoke to Jane about Graham and some of his behavior, and she was saying that she used to be a counselor, and she knew that Graham had problems. I don't want to get into it too much, but you know, I said, have you ever considered maybe doing some counseling again? And she said, oh, that's what I was trained to do. So.
Doing some counseling as opposed to being a parking enforcement officer?
Correct. And I prefaced it, I think there's a video I have of it. I prefaced my statement with, you know, I know this is a point of contention, but have you ever considered doing counseling again or something to that effect?
Now, do you have familiarity with the use of videotape?
I would say yes. I don't have any technical training or anything like that.
In the context of your Robin Hood activity, do you yourself been subject to videotape?
Yes, so as you are aware, an individual named Peter Thomas, you know, I think it was late March 2013, he came out and he began videotaping us. You know, I guess I asked him, you know, I introduced myself to him and he refused to give me his name, but you know, I told him it's customary in an introduction to give people, each party to introduce themselves. So he eventually told me his name was Peter. So.
And how much, when you say videotaping, you mean like for 30 seconds, a minute?
So when I was about in the downtown area doing Robin Hooding, he would generally follow us with a video camera, and there were a few occasions where the parking enforcement officers had left, and he was still walking around asking us questions and videotaping us.
So you were videotaping, or somebody would be videotaping the parking enforcement officers, Rob, and he would be videotaping people, videotaping the parking enforcement officers?
Correct.
And for how long was he doing that?
I think for maybe 2 weeks, if I could take a guess at it. I'm not entirely sure.
Did he ask any questions?
He did. He asked me a lot of questions.
What sort of things?
You know, kind of why I was out there. He asked me, is there a schedule for it? And then the city actually edited it to make it. I said that the schedule is basically Monday through Saturday. I think I said 9 to 5, but really it's the parking enforcement schedule. It's kind of when I want to be out there. And, you know, he asked some other questions too. I don't recall everything.
Did you ever see those videotapes?
Yes, I actually filed a 91A request, and the city of Keene did issue me the videotapes. I'm not sure they provided all the tapes, because there were some dates when he was out that I never received the videos for. And perhaps he deleted them, I'm not sure.
And what was the length of the tapes?
I honestly have no way of knowing that. It was probably over 30 hours of footage.
How close or far away from you was he?
He would get pretty close to us. I mean, he would. There was a few occasions where I was walking, and there's one point in particular I remember where I was at Michael's or Michelle's or whatever that is at Railroad, and I stopped because Jane had stopped, and I turned and he was like right there, and then Jane walked in front, and I think I actually have footage of this. So he was, I don't know, 2 feet from me, behind me.
Was there any discussion with him or anybody else in the city of Keene in terms of the appropriateness of his investigative activities?
I don't think, I never had any conversations with the city of Keene regarding Peter Thomas, no.
Okay.
I asked him if he was acting as a private citizen or if he was being paid by the government. He refused to answer that question.
Did you ultimately find out the answer to that question?
I did. So
How did you find out?
initially I found out because someone within the city, I guess, leaked to Ian that the city had hired him to, follow us around and videotape us. And I'm not sure who that was. That was secondhand information to me. But at one point, I guess I suspected it too. Another very strong indicator was the first day I ever met Peter Thomas. He was at Wells Street parking garage, and it was like the end of the day. He actually got into the parking enforcement van with Jane. So I guess I figured like, oh, he must be.
Did you ever receive a copy of his contract?
I did. I also filed a 91A for that.
Thank you.
Council Kennedy.
Cleveland, you've been told numerous times by Jane to back off from her, haven't you?
That's incorrect. I've been told twice that I can remember, both times with Peter Thomas present. And it was obviously a staged speech that she had prepared to give to me. And both times I told her why I disagreed with her.
You've been told numerous times by Lynn to back off, haven't you? And you refused
I don't
to.
recall any time that Lynn has told me that.
You've been told numerous times by Alan to back off, and you refused to do that, haven't you?
I mean, he may have told me once or twice, but I don't recall specifically.
Now, when you do what you do that with other people, as you suggested with Attorney Meyer, correct?
I mean, occasionally I do it by myself, but generally speaking, the ideal configuration would be 2 people, one to fill a meter and one to place a card on the vehicle.
That's the ideal, but you also have had more than 2 people surrounding these parking enforcement officers, haven't you?
I mean, when you said that you've had it, you're implying that somehow I'm leading these people, and I'm not. And I would say initially, January and February was when we had the most groups, and I actually had a conversation with Alan that I have a recording of, where I asked him, what is your biggest complaint towards my activities? And he specifically says, I don't like the large groups.
This is my question. You've been out there with more than 2 people on numerous occasions surrounding these 3 PEOs, haven't you?
I mean, I've been
Haven't
out
you?
in public
Excuse me?
with some of the defendants, yes.
Yes, surrounding the 3 PEOs individually, haven't you?
I mean, I don't feel like I surrounded anyone, sir.
Well, you've been out there with Mr. Colson, haven't you? Or surrounding the PEOs?
I guess point
Haven't you?
clarification.
Why don't you answer my question,
No.
and then you can explain it.
No, he asked, respond. You can't say the question's not answered non-responsive until he's had a chance to make it.
I'll defer to the judge on this one.
I think what we're gonna do is when you pose a question, you're both talking over each other a little bit. Please, Mr. Cleveland, I'll ask Attorney Bauer to let you finish your answer, pose your question. If it turns out that this is not being responsive to the question, we'll address it at that point.
Thank you.
Pose the question.
So, Mr. Cleveland, on occasion since January, and February, and March, and April, all the way up through September, you've been out surrounding the PEOs with Mr. Colson, haven't you?
I mean, what do you mean by surrounding?
Being within 30 feet of the PEOs with
Oh,
Mr.
well, in
Colson.
that case, yes.
Okay.
I've been within 30 feet with Graham Colson,
Yeah.
correct.
And you've also been with Garrett Ian within 30 feet of the PEOs over those series of months, correct?
I'm not sure every month, but generally speaking, yes.
Okay, and also with Kate,
Yes,
and also with Ian Freeman,
yes.
and with Peter Iyer?
Peter Iyer has never, to the best of my knowledge, been within 30 feet of a parking enforcement officer who I have been.
Well, you have been, okay. Now, your goal is not just to plug meters, is it?
No, my goal is it's not to plug meters, it's to fill a meter that would have been ticketed.
Right. And you've gone on record that you want to shut down the parking department, haven't you?
I mean, what do you mean by I've gone on record?
Well, I'm asking you the question. You've gone on record, you have said, you've admitted that your goal is to shut down the parking department for the city of Keene. That's
I mean-
your ultimate goal, isn't it?
That's not my goal, Robin Hooding per se. I have spoke to the city council on March 7th about a 3-year proposal to phase out the parking department.
And part of that phasing out, you want to stop the parking enforcement officers from doing their jobs as they're currently defined, don't you?
That's incorrect. So my 3-year proposal would be, I think, phase 1, year 1 would be the city of Keene issues bonds to build more parking spots. You know, phase 2, I think it was even a parking structure. I don't remember exactly what I told them. And then phase 3 was a 3-year phasing out of the parking department.
And one way to do that is to prevent the PEOs from doing their day-to-day jobs of checking and handing out parking tickets, isn't it?
I have never prevented them from writing a ticket besides putting the coin in the meter, an expired meter.
Why do you want to shut down the parking department of the city of Keene?
I mean, I would say that I think that parking, is it possible that it could be handled in other ways? And I think it is. There's a city in Connecticut that, you know, they had a dying downtown, and they actually removed the parking meters, and they kind of freed it up. And then the marketplace went in and solved it, and now it's no longer an issue. So they just built more spots, and it worked. So
And under your proposal, there would not be any parking enforcement officers for the city of Keene, under your version, correct?
under my 3-year proposal,
Yeah.
I would say that's accurate.
Okay. And so in the interim, as part of that plan, as part of that design to eliminate the parking department for the city of Keene, you believe that you want to plug meters to prevent these folks from doing their jobs, right?
I mean, I don't view it as preventing them from doing their jobs. I view it as I'm helping my neighbor out, and, you know, I'm saving someone from the $5 and possibly court if they had chose to challenge the ticket.
Now, why do you need to be within 30 feet of these parking enforcement officers to do whatever you want to do?
Well, so suppose I went downtown and I just randomly fed expired meters. There's a chance, let's say I put 12 minutes in a vehicle in the meter, and then the vehicle owner leaves at 15 minutes, and the parking enforcement officer never walked by. That's not truly a save, in my opinion. So therefore, you know, I don't want to give the city of Keene money That's not my goal. My goal is to fill the meters so that parking tickets will not be issued.
Your goal is that parking tickets not be issued by the PEOs, right?
Well,
Isn't that what you just said?
my goal is, I
Isn't
don't
that what you
believe that
just
the
said,
time
sir?
limits necessarily should be enforced. The parking enforcement officers have chalked tires. They come back in, let's say, 2.5 hours, and they, you know, they'll see that the cars are still there. I'm not as opposed to that.
Now, you can protest and do all the activities that you want to do about where I'm standing, which is about 10 yards away, can't you?
Not really, like I mentioned with Attorney Meyer, it's very difficult to have a conversation with one of the enforcers if they want to initiate one or I want to.
But you've been told by these three people, haven't you, time and time again, that by and large what you do is to frustrate them, to irritate them, and to harass them. They've said that to you time and time again, haven't they?
No, not really.
Were you